I'm 24 and recently moved in with my boyfriend of 2 years, Brian. We'd talked about it for months, planned everything, and even signed the lease together. It was supposed to be the beginning of something stable. We both had steady jobs, no kids, no crazy exes, at least, that's what I thought. We moved into a cozy 2-bedroom apartment just outside of Boston. The second room was supposed to be for Brian's work-from-home setup and my art space. We both needed that room. Or at least, we thought we did. 3 weeks after we unpacked the last box, I came home from work to find someone else's shoes by the door. Not Brian's. Not mine. Women's boots. I stood there, confused. Then I heard laughter coming from the kitchen, Brian's voice, and a woman's. I walked in to find them both casually drinking coffee like it was no big deal. The woman smiled at me like we'd met before. She was tall, pretty, with this confident smirk that instantly set off alarms in my chest. Brian just said, "Oh, hey, babe, this is Marla." I froze. That name. I knew that name. It was the ex he once described as the one who messed him up for years. The one he swore he hadn't spoken to in forever. The one he never wanted to see again. But there she was, sitting in our kitchen, drinking out of one of our mugs. Brian's explanation was casual. Too casual. Marla had fallen on hard times. She'd just broken up with her fiancé and needed a place to crash. Just for a few nights, he said. Just until she could get back on her feet. I didn't say much. I just nodded slowly and walked past them to our room. I closed the door and sat on the bed, trying to breathe. I didn't even know how to start processing what I had just walked into. That night, I barely slept. And the next morning? I realized she hadn't left. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon. For a second, I thought Brian had made breakfast. But when I walked into the kitchen, it was Marla. She was cooking, barefoot, wearing my hoodie. The one Brian always used to steal from me because it smelled like home. She smiled at me like we were roommates, not strangers. Said she hoped I didn't mind. She found it on the couch and got chilly. Brian walked in a minute later, all smiles like this was some sitcom. He kissed me on the cheek, told me to relax, and acted like this was the most normal thing in the world. I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet. I didn't even touch the food. Later that day, I brought it up. I told Brian I wasn't okay with her staying here. That I felt blindsided. That she wasn't just some random friend, she was his ex. The one he said broke his heart and cheated on him. The one he promised was dead to him. He nodded slowly, then said something I didn't expect. She's going through a rough time. I can't just abandon her. You'd do the same if it was someone you cared about. That shut me up, for a minute. But the way he said it made me feel like I was the problem for not being more compassionate. I wanted to believe it was temporary. That she'd be gone soon. But every day, she unpacked a little more. A pair of heels by the door. Her skincare in the bathroom. A robe hanging behind the bedroom door. Not her room, the bedroom I shared with Brian. And then one day, she moved the desk. The second bedroom? The one we agreed would be half mine for art? She slid the desk all the way to one side and put up her own mirror, makeup, and clothes rack. She said it was just until she found her own place. But nothing about this felt temporary. Every inch of this apartment started to feel like it belonged to her. I was the one who felt like a guest. At first, I thought maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe this was just a weird blip, a boundary blur that would settle. But then Marla started talking to me like she knew me too well. She'd mention little things, specific things I'd only told Brian. Like my fear of birds, the scar on my thigh from when I fell off a bike as a kid, the way I hated loud chewing. Stuff that never came up in casual conversation. One night, I overheard her telling Brian that I probably just needed time to adjust. That it wasn't easy being around someone so confident. The way she said it made my skin crawl, like I was the insecure one here. Like she expected me to be jealous. But what really sent me over the edge was what happened with my art supplies. I came home from work early, exhausted, just wanting to decompress and maybe sketch a bit. But when I opened the door to the second room, everything was gone. Not missing, just shoved into a box in the corner. She was sitting at the desk. My desk. With her laptop, her coffee, her music playing, typing away like she owned it. When I asked what happened to my stuff, she smiled and said, "Oh. I figured you weren't using it lately. Hope that's okay." It wasn't okay. None of this was okay. I didn't even bother arguing. I just turned and walked out, sat in the bathroom with the door locked, and stared at the floor for an hour. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I couldn't even feel sad anymore, just numb. And worst of all, Brian hadn't said a word. He was letting it happen. And I was starting to wonder if that was the plan all along. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That maybe Marla wasn't being malicious. Maybe she was just clueless. Maybe Brian was just trying to be kind. But that hope died the moment I opened our dresser. I was looking for my pajama shorts. Couldn't find them in the usual drawer, so I opened the next one down. That's when I saw it. A perfectly folded row of lace lingerie, not mine. Next to it, her perfume. The same one I'd smelled in the bathroom and assumed she was just using there. There was even a framed photo of her and Brian from what looked like high school. They were standing on a beach, sunburnt and smiling like some tragic teenage dream. That photo? It hadn't been in this apartment before. I felt sick. I pulled the drawer shut, paced the room, then sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. My thoughts were racing, but everything came down to one fact: she wasn't just staying here. She was living here. And Brian wasn't just letting it happen, he was inviting it. That night, I tried to talk to him again. He was half watching a game, barely looking at me, nodding like he couldn't be bothered. When I brought up the drawer, he shrugged, said she must have misplaced a few things while unpacking. Unpacking? I hadn't heard that word yet, not from him. I asked him directly, was she moving in? He didn't answer. That silence was louder than any fight. I went back to our bedroom, stared at the ceiling in the dark, and knew, deep down, something had shifted. Something was coming. And I wasn't sure I'd like what I found when it arrived. I wasn't sleeping well anymore. Every night felt like a silent battle, with me clinging to the edge of the bed while Brian lay next to me like a stranger. We barely talked. He wasn't cruel, just distant. Polite. Like I was a guest he couldn't wait to check out. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up needing water. I walked into the kitchen barefoot, trying not to wake anyone. The apartment was quiet, lights off. But as I passed the spare room, I heard it, whispering. Not just whispering. Laughing. Their voices. Brian and Marla. I stood frozen by the door, holding my breath. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. He said something about how things used to be. She said she missed those nights. Then he said, softly, you always knew me better. That line hit like a bullet. I stepped away quickly, my throat dry, my skin ice cold. I walked back to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and stood there staring at the sink, wondering what the hell I was still doing here. I wanted to confront him. Burst in and scream. Demand the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I walked back to our room, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling again. Because part of me still hoped, somehow, that I was wrong. That it wasn't what it sounded like. The next morning, they were both in the kitchen when I woke up. Laughing. Again. Same as always. And I realized, this wasn't just about me anymore. They weren't hiding it. They didn't have to. That morning, I made myself coffee and sat on the balcony alone. The air was cold, but I needed to feel something. I scrolled through my phone, numb, until I opened Instagram. I don't follow Marla. But I know her username. And for some reason, I decided to check her profile. That's when everything cracked wide open. There it was. A photo of her and Brian, sitting together on our couch. Her legs tucked under his arm around her. Both of them smiling like it was some cozy couple moment. The caption? Some people never really leave your heart. Dizzy. I nearly dropped my phone. I scrolled through the comments. Her friends cheering her on. You two are meant to be. So happy for you. One even asked if they were back together. And the worst part? Brian had liked the photo. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Every nerve in my body was buzzing, but I couldn't move. I felt like a ghost, like my life had been hollowed out and I was the last one to know. He hadn't just let her move in. He had moved on. While I was still sleeping in the same bed, sharing meals, paying bills, keeping hope alive in a place that had already replaced me. I locked myself in the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and asked the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. Was I still his girlfriend? Or just a placeholder? I didn't wait this time. I walked out of the bathroom, phone still in my hand, and found Brian alone in the kitchen. Marla wasn't around. It was just us, for once. I showed him the photo. No words. Just held it up and waited. He didn't even flinch. Just said, it's not what it looks like. I laughed. Couldn't help it. That line? After everything? He went on, talked about how it was just an old memory, how she was going through stuff, how it wasn't serious. He told me I was overreacting, again, like I was the one making something out of nothing. Then he had the nerve to say I was being cold lately. That I hadn't been affectionate. That he didn't know where we stood anymore. Like I was the one who created this mess. Like I was the one who brought an ex into our home and let her take over our lives. He kept talking, trying to justify every move, and I just stood there frozen. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. Because deep down, I already knew. There was no confrontation coming. There was no apology. He wasn't sorry. And I wasn't staying. So I turned around, went to the bedroom, packed a bag. No screaming. No dramatic exits. Just silence. Because when the love dies quietly, all you can do is follow its echo out the door. I left that night, grabbed what I needed, called a friend, and didn't look back. I didn't even bother telling Marla. I figured Brian would explain it his own way, twist the story into something that made him look noble and misunderstood. I stayed at my friend's for 2 nights. Tried to clear my head. I didn't post anything, didn't tell anyone outside my closest circle what had happened. I just needed to breathe. Then the messages started. Not from Brian. From her. Marla. First, she messaged me saying she hoped we could be mature about this, that she and Brian didn't plan for things to happen this way. That they just fell into something real. Then she said she understood if I was hurt, but hoped I wouldn't make things more difficult. More difficult? I was stunned, sitting there staring at my phone like it had slapped me. But she didn't stop. The next message was a photo. Her. In my old art space, holding one of my sketchbooks. Didn't know you had this much talent, she wrote. You should have shared it more. My hands went ice cold. That was my private sketchbook. The one I kept hidden. She'd gone through my things, touched my life. And now she was parading around in it like it was hers. I realized something then. She hadn't just taken my boyfriend. She was trying to take me. After that message, I blocked her. But it didn't stop. She didn't need direct contact, she had social media. And slowly, I started noticing things. She dyed her hair. Same color as mine. Started posting outfits that looked eerily familiar, clothes I used to wear, styles I loved. Even captions that sounded like my old posts. Word for word. She shared a photo of a painting she claimed was inspired by growth and healing. But it was a copy of one of my oldest canvas pieces. I recognized every brushstroke. Then I saw a story. A video of her making breakfast in my kitchen. Wearing my robe. Brian walks in. She turns the camera to him. He smiles, says, "Morning, babe." That was my morning. My life. But now she was living it, and showing the world like it was hers all along. And maybe the worst part? People were eating it up. Her followers cheered her on. You're glowing. You two are perfect together. So happy to see you thriving. Thriving. On the ashes of everything I built. I wasn't just erased. I was replaced. And she wanted me to watch. I didn't retaliate. I didn't post screenshots or vent online or try to win anyone over. I didn't argue with Brian. I didn't try to defend myself to people who never cared to ask what really happened. Instead, I disappeared. Quietly. I moved out of state, closer to family. Got a new job. Took time to rebuild my space, my routine, my peace. Blocked them both everywhere. I changed my number. Started over. For a while, I wondered if they'd stay together. If they'd keep feeding off each other, circling the drain like two people who only thrive in someone else's reflection. Then, a few weeks ago, I got a message request from an old mutual friend. Just one sentence. Guess who's posting breakup quotes now? I didn't reply. Didn't even open the profile. I already knew. That kind of love, the kind that starts by gutting someone else's life, it never lasts. It burns bright, fast, and always ends in smoke and silence. Meanwhile, I've been painting again. Signed up for a show last week. A gallery downtown. First time in 2 years. The piece I submitted? It's called Inheritance. It's a simple canvas. A split image, one side dark, chaotic, covered in fingerprints and fragments. The other? Light, still, whole again. Everyone keeps asking me what it means. I just smile. Because the truth is, when someone tries to take your life and wear it like skin, they never realize. They can't imitate your soul. They only inherit the mess they made. And I walked away clean.